The Habs come back from the break rejuvenated, but how long will this last? We'll talk about this and more on Hockey Inside Out. Hello and welcome to Hockey Inside Out. I am your host, Jessica Rusnak. Joining me on the panel today, we've got Stu Cowan from the Montreal Gazette back from his bye week. Stu, we didn't see any pictures of you on the beach, on a yacht, or anything like that. Where have you been?
No, I don't make the same salaries as those NHL guys for those expensive trips.
We've also got former Montreal Canadiens player, Stanley Cup champ, and former assistant coach with the Canadiens, Rick Green. And we've got another NHLer with us as well. We've got Chris Nilan, and you can also check out Chris Nilan on his podcast, Raw Knuckles Podcast. Thanks for joining us again this week. So while the Canadiens were off, most of them enjoying the sun and the beach, management was busy at work. We saw them trade Sean Monahan to the Winnipeg Jets for a first-round pick in this year's draft and a conditional third-round pick in 2027 if the Jets win the Cup this year. Did Kent Hughes get enough for this trade with Sean Monahan? What do you think? Rick, why don't you start us off?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't come as any surprise that this thing happened. I think the timing of it was good from the standpoint. Monahan was playing very well. He was healthy and, was attracting probably a lot of people that were interested in his services. And, Kent Hughes in true form had stated before that he was going to accommodate him by finding a place for him to play that could have a chance to maybe go far in the playoffs and a possible cup championship. So he was good to his word on that. I think, in the big picture, he got good value for Sean Monahan, and sticking with the plan. They're trying to load up with the first rounders and see if they can't find some good quality young guys that are going to step in there and make an impact with time in the future.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When they got a first round pick when they took Sean Monahan for taking that contract from Calgary, and at the time, I think Kent Hughes' plan was to try and get another first round pick. It fell through last season because of the injuries to Monahan. They cut his season short with the broken foot and then the groin injury, but he's been able to stay healthy this year. And they did get the first round pick, so I think that was the plan going in. I think they're very happy getting it. I think waiting longer, maybe they get a little bit more, but with Sean Monahan's injury history, maybe he gets hurt again. So I think when the first round pick was offered and it was on the table, Kent Hughes decided to jump at it and take it. I think that was a plan going in there. A lot of Canadiens fans maybe are comparing it to what the Flames were able to get for Elias Lindholm, but the difference there is Lindholm has no injury history. Here's a guy who plays every game. He doesn't have any kind of injury history, and Sean Monahan has a lot. So I think it was a good trade for both teams. I think he'll be a great fit in Winnipeg. I think he'd be a great fit on any team in the NHL. He was one of the most popular guys in the Canadiens locker room, a true pro, a real vet. A lot of players really leaned on him a lot, both on and off the ice. He'll be great in Winnipeg, but from the Canadiens standpoint, I think Kent Hughes made the right move. They now have 2 first-round picks this year. They have 2 first-round picks next year. The pick that he acquired, I wouldn't be surprised if he trades it. It'll be a late pick in the first round coming from Winnipeg, similar to what he's done in previous deals to get Kirby Dach, to get Alex Newhook. So I think that is something that will probably happen. But having all those picks at his disposal, the Canadiens now have 23 picks in the next 2 years, as I said, including 2 first-round picks both years. So Kent Hughes has a lot of cards to play moving forward. He's not going to use all those draft picks, but he can package some of them either with prospects or other players and try and make some more trades. So I think the return for Sean Monahan was very good.
Yeah, listen, I like what these guys have done so far. Really, they're creative in the deals they make. The Monahan deal. I know you can't keep everybody happy. Always someone's going to have something to say about it. Like, we should have waited close to the deadline, this and that. And I'm glad he pulled the trigger when he did, because, again, I love Monahan as a player, always have when he's in Calgary. He is a true pro. He's a throwback player, could have played in our era easily. And I just look at his injury history, right? You come out of the All-Star break and you stop playing again, a couple days off, and all you need him to do is get hurt again. And there's always that possibility. Then he does, and you're stuck with him. You don't get the asset that maybe down the road Kent Hughes, like you said, Stu, can use to trade to get a certain player they want. So I think it was a great move by these guys. They're creative. They're good. Listen, you can question who they pick and all this and the trades they make. I get all that. But these guys are trying to do a proper rebuild, not trading this one, that one, just, really they seem like they have a good plan, and they're sticking to it. And this is not certainly an easy town to do that in, especially with the frustration and the number of years they've missed the playoffs. So I think these guys are sticking to their guns, and they're going to do their thing. And hopefully at some point we see this team be a serious contender, but it's still going to take a while.
Yeah, and it's all about asset management, right, Knuckles? I mean, last year, Joel Edmondson might have gotten them a first rounder if he hadn't been hurt. He was hurt. They ended up getting a third and a seventh for him in the offseason. And, if Monahan, you're taking a couple of therapy days, missing practice before the trade, so maybe there's something nagging there. But, if he had pulled his groin again this week or next week, Canadiens fans would be all over Kent Hughes. Why'd you wait so long? Why'd you wait so long? So it's smart asset management. It's had 2 first-round picks. And with Sean Monahan, there's a long injury history there going back to his days in Calgary. He's had all kinds of surgeries and everything else. And knock on wood, I hope he stays healthy with Winnipeg. I hope he helps Winnipeg go on a long playoff run, because he's a real class act, a real good guy to deal with. But that body's pretty banged up.
And I think you have to be careful, too, on the so-called draft prospects turning out to be, players that have an impact. And there's a time frame involved here where, these draft picks are going to eventually play at the NHL level. And, it comes a fine line between them deciding, okay, how can we make ourselves more competitive now versus in the future, with the chance that we might be 2 or 3 years away from getting some of our future guys playing up to the NHL caliber. So I'm sure there's lots of discussions on how, and there should be, on how do we get our team to play better and surround the key guys that we do have with some other guys that can impact the results more of a sooner than later type approach. And time will tell as we move forward to see what they're going to do with all of these picks, and see whether or not actually some of them turn out to be getting something in return. Sometime maybe this year or over the course of the summer.
So now with Monahan out of town, who do you think is going to be the next player that will be traded from the Canadiens? Chris, if you had a crystal ball, who do you think is the next one going?
Listen, you got to think guys like maybe Tanner Pearson, come playoff time, big bodies that can help teams go far in the playoffs. Josh Anderson. I don't know if they're going to go with the 3 goalies. I think the first one to go would be Jake Allen. So, one of those 3, who knows? I don't think anybody's going to touch on Mia. But again, those big bodies are the ones sometimes that teams are looking for come playoff time. Yeah, they'd love to get a guy who could go out there and score goals and be effective offensively, but you also want guys who are able to be standing at the end of a long, grueling playoff series. So those are the guys, I guess, I would think. And maybe the back end, David Savard. He's older. He could, plug a hole somewhere with a team that's going to make a playoff run. So, those are the ones.
Yeah, I think Jake Allen's a guy, that Kent Hughes would like to trade first. I think he'd like to solve this 3 goalie situation, but he's not going to give Jake Allen away for nothing. And as he said at his midseason news conference, Hughes said, there's a possibility they might have 3 goalies until the end of the season, and then maybe you'll see what the market is in the summer to try and move Jake Allen. But David Savard's a guy I think would be appealing to a lot of teams. He could certainly help the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't know if they can fit him under their salary cap, but the Leafs have a lot of problems on the blue line, and he's the kind of guy they could use. That steady, solid defenseman. He'd be good in that locker room too. He'd be good in any locker room. He's a class act, a real pro's pro. So those are the guys. Josh Anderson, I've defended Josh Anderson in the past, saying I wouldn't trade him. But the way he's played this season and the way he's struggled, and he doesn't, fit on that number one line with Suzuki and Caulfield. We see Slafkovsky back there now. I'd be more tempted now to listen to offers for Josh Anderson than I would have been at the beginning of the season.
I'm sure there's lots of conversations that are going on as far as, who would they like to maybe replace, or who would they like to, make a move on. And, you talk about Nuck's big bodies, and David Savard fits the big body role of a type of guy down crunch time to fill in and do a pretty good job logging some serious minutes. And, he's 33 years old with a look at what they have up and coming. To have him play well, doing what he's doing, might be a name that they could really dangle out there. I know Kent Hughes said that he's not entertaining the thought of trading him, but if the phone call came and something was really good in their view of what they need to do to improve now, I think that David Savard would be a good one that they could find some value in return for, with a quality guy that's going to do a job and help out some team that's looking to go far in the playoffs.
Well, the thing with Kent Hughes, he's got a good poker face too. I mean, why would he say, "Yeah, I'm looking to trade David Savard," right? And other GMs are listening to what he's saying also. So he's like, "No, I'm not." But if somebody calls, it's a great one. I remember when I interviewed Kent Hughes at a one-on-one after he got the job, and he told me a story about how he was trying, when he was an agent, he was trying to get Vinny Lecavalier to sign with him. And Lecavalier wasn't certain. And anyway, Lecavalier finally phoned them and said, "Okay, I'm going to sign with you." And Kent said, "Oh, that's great." And Vinny said, "What, you're not more excited than that?" And he says, "Well, you want me to negotiate contracts for you. You don't want me to have a poker face?" So sort of that's the way Kent Hughes operates. Like, there's no other GMs watch these news conferences. They hear what's saying. So even if he is trying to shop David Savard, why would he say that? Even if he's determined to get rid of Jake Allen before the trade deadline, why would he say that? Just keep your, don't show your cards. Let the other teams think that you're willing to keep Jake Allen until the end of the year. Let the other GMs think that you have no interest in trading David Savard. But all that's going to do is up the offers coming your way.
Yeah, it's Jess, you asked who I thought they may trade, and the reason why I said Anderson, because he could be valuable to a team. Not like I want to see him go. Yeah. He's the type of guy I think that could certainly help Suzuki in a leadership role. Have one of them older players there that you can rely on and go to if you have to. So, I always liked Josh Anderson. I know he's had his struggles, but I love that kid as a player. And, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And Anderson's built for the playoffs, right, Knuckles? I mean, I remember when the Canadiens went to that Stanley Cup run a couple of years ago. I mean, if you're playing a 7-game series on defense against him, it's not fun. He dumps it in your corner, and you're going to get run into the boards like every single time. And, after game 3, game 4, you dump it in the corner, the guys are looking over their shoulder at him coming. So it'd be interesting to see what teams might be willing to give up for a guy like that has a proven record in what he can do in the playoffs.
Well, it's definitely going to be an exciting time in the NHL from now until the trade deadline to see which players are on the move. And it's been a few years now with Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton at the helm of the Canadiens trying to do this rebuild. Do you still have confidence in their approach to rebuilding this team? Do you see them putting this team on the right track in the future? Stu, why don't you give us your thoughts first?
I do. Rebuilds are going to take time and they're going to be painful. And I think there's some Canadiens fans maybe starting to lose a little bit of patience. But it took a long time for the Canadiens to get in the bad situation they were. And it's going to take a long time to fix it. And these guys aren't just plugging holes. They have a plan. There's, I've said, asset management. They're bringing in all these draft picks. They're collecting as many players as they can in that 21, 22, 23 age group. They have a solid plan in place. All three of them, Gorton, Hughes, and St. Louis, are on the same page. They're confident guys. They're smart guys. There's no guarantee it's going to work. There's no guarantee any rebuild is going to work. Look at Ottawa. Look at Buffalo. It's not easy to win in today's NHL. But they have a solid plan. They're sticking to it. And at the end of the day, it's going to work or it's not going to work. And if it doesn't work, they'll be out. I mean, the NHL is a winning business. But Jeff Molson, when he committed to this rebuild, he committed to it. Like he decided we need to rebuild this. And it's going to take time. And I think what they've done so far, they've done a good job. The record where they are right now is quite impressive, considering the injuries to Doc and Newhook, and Savard was out for a long time. The players compete for Marty St. Louis. They want to play for Marty St. Louis. That's still the case. It's going to take time. And I think you're another year or two away from this team getting to where Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton said right from day one where they want them to be. Not a team that gets in the playoffs one year and maybe not the next. A team that's competitive in the playoffs every year, competitive every year. And I think they're still a couple of years away from that at least.
Yeah. Listen, I think we got to start over again. These guys aren't getting it done. We should go back to the Putin rebuild. We'll bring Bergie back.
Well, the problem is there's a guy from Boston there, I think. Is there not?
I look at the track record of Gorton. Hughes certainly a track record of being an agent and seeing it from the other side, I think is awesome. Gorton has done a great job when he was in Boston he started out as a statistician and worked his way up. He ended up being filling the hole, temporary GM until they named Chiarelli, and he made some great moves as temporary GM. It was unbelievable what he did there. The draft picks he had, he brought in Chara, he drafted Kessel, Marchand, those guys. And then he goes to New York. He doesn't get the job in Boston. He goes to New York. He did a hell of a job there. He worked his way up. Then when he got in the big seat, he transitioned that team and rebuilt that team. And he did a great job. Now he's here alongside Hughes. Certainly they're working this thing together. I think it's a great duo, a great team. And listen, people are going to get frustrated, but they're always going to have people that just, nothing makes them happy. But I think, like you said, Stu, they do have a plan. They're sticking to it, and they're going to follow through on it. And, they picked Reinbacher last year. Everybody's pissed off. Oh, my God, Reinbacher. Hello. And I know the same thing with Kotkaniemi happened, but we know how he ended up in Carolina. I don't think we're going to see Jeff, Gorton or Hughes go out and make an offer on a player like Bergie did here, and put the team in a situation where, they lost a potential asset over something like that. So these guys have a plan. I like what they're doing, and it'll take a Boston guy to clean this mess up.
Knuckles, as you said, Bergevin, I think it was called the Putin rebuild. He was always just plugging holes, right? But in his defense,
he made some good moves.
At that time, Jeff Molson wanted his team to get in the playoffs, right? So he was trying to get into the playoffs. But the thing is, the other thing about Marc Bergevin, remember that infamous line he had, if you want loyalty, get a dog. Well, the way Kent Hughes treats players is a lot different than the way Marc Bergevin did. You go back to with Piqué and with Radulov and with Markov, who never got his 1,000th game, and Pat Chiaretti and all these guys. It got personal and it got ugly at the end. And then you look at the way Kent Hughes treats guys, the way he handled the Jeff Petrie situation, the way he handled Sean Monahan. The fact Sean Monahan wanted to come back here last year as a free agent, he re-signed in Montreal because he liked what's happening here. He liked the way this rebuild is going. I mean, with you guys, the way they treat the alumni, right, compared to the way Bergevin treated the alumni. The Canadiens are a class organization again with the way these guys are running it from the top down. And the fact Sean Monahan wanted to re-sign here last summer says a lot. And because he did want to re-sign, the Canadiens were able to get that first-round pick. And it goes around the league. These guys are buddies. These guys are playing opposing teams. They know each other. They're either play junior together or they know each other in the summer. They talk. And when word gets around that the atmosphere in Montreal is not good, they don't treat their players well, people don't want to come here. That's changing now, and that's because of the way Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes and Marty St. Louis are running this organization. They treat players with respect. They're very honest with them. They need to make tough decisions. When Kent Hughes said that he hadn't spoken with David Savard yet about possibly trading him, but he also said, well, my door is always open. Like if he wants to come in and talk to me about it, he just needs to come in the door and talk. And that's a big difference, I think, from the days when Bergevin was running the team.
And I think the approach that they're using, these two guys, is one of consistency in their plan. And they're not looking for quick, short-term fixes. They have this in their mind. There's a process here in finding the type of people that they want in the organization long-term. And they're prepared to, work and find ways to draft well, make good selections. And, down the road here, maybe they're going to find some players that they can pick up, along the way that's going to add to their team philosophy, which is wanting to play in Montreal and wanting to be part of the Canadiens organization. And hats off to these guys. And they do continue to talk about, patience. But there's going to be a point in time where the patience is going to get a little bit thin, and we're going to have to see a little bit more upside and positive results. But they're going to do it their way, and they've had a good experience in what they need to do to move this process forward. And it should be good to see as the future unfolds for the potential players that are going to come into the mix.
Yeah, and this is only the second full year of the rebuild. I mean, the injury to Doc threw a real wrench into the plans, and the same with Newhook, right? They missed those guys for a long time, and it affected what kind of line combination St. Louis could try to tinker with and whatnot. But they're on solid ground in this rebuild, and again, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But there's no reason to believe right now that it won't work. Maybe they won't win a Stanley Cup, but that's not easy to do in a 32-team league. But I can see this team becoming a contending team that's going to be in the playoffs, not just 1 year, but for several years in a row. And then, one of Mark Bergevin's lines, get in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Moving on to rapid fire, the Montreal Canadiens played their first game in 10 days on Tuesday in Washington. They beat them 5-2. And Juraj Slafkovsky, he scored 2 goals in that win. Is it fair to say that was his coming out party? It was great performance by him. What's your thoughts on all this, Stu? Let's get you to share yours first.
A little bit, because he had been taken off the number 1 line, and then he was put back on it. And the power play goal is what I really like that one-timer. He's been so reluctant to shoot the puck. And I know on social media, I've had people criticizing Mike Matheson for not passing the puck across to him enough. And probably one of the reasons Mike Matheson wasn't passing it across because he wouldn't shoot it. And then, that game against Wyatt, that one-timer, what a blast. And he's got to do, the kid can shoot the puck. And you got to, it's easy to forget he's 19 years old and he's playing with good players, and he probably feels that pressure that maybe I need to give them the puck. I imagine, Knuckles, when you were a young guy, you probably felt that too. You got to give these veteran guys who get them the puck, but he can shoot the puck. And now,
no way, I just dumped it in.
But now that one-timer worked so well, I think we're going to see it more often. I think we're going to see Mike Matheson feeding him more often. Hey. And, the rest of this season they're not making the playoffs. That's obvious right now. The Sean Monahan trade show management, it's all about rebuilding and moving forward. So now for Slafkovsky, just leave him back there on that first line, play him on the power play, encourage him to shoot more. I wish he'd have 2 hands on his stick more, because he keeps getting those one-handed hooking penalties. He's got another one against Washington. But he's starting to look like a number 1 draft pick. I mean, we're starting to see now why the Canadiens took him with that number 1 pick, and that big shot is one of the reasons. So he's got to keep using that and keep firing those one-timers every chance he gets.
Great to see a big smile on his face, and he knows that he's doing some good things and feeling good about his overall game, and the results are happening. You touch on shooting the puck. We talked about it a number of times. He's starting to realize this: if I can shoot it, I can shoot it pretty well. And is effective at it. And, putting him up there with those 2 other guys that are not bad players that find ways to make passes and plays does help him. And he's taking full advantage of enjoying this ride of being with those 2. And the results are coming. Really, really happy for him, because he has been dealing with some issues and criticism and all that stuff that comes with a high pick. And now he's starting to benefit from getting the results, and hopefully will continue for him, because he's a great kid and great upside.
Listen, first overall pick, there's pressure, there's no question. And I think what a lot of people worried about was, they looked at Galchenyuk when he picked pretty high, Kokaniemi picked pretty high, and they kind of looked at those guys as, failed picks, basically. And they were, in a sense. They never had that progression. And when they saw it taking a little time with this kid, he's a boy. Yeah, he's more mature physically and somewhat more emotionally and mentally for a kid that age, because he lived on his own, right, since he's been 16 years old, which is incredible. But, people forget he's 18 years old. And I love what I saw from him last night there. But I've been watching, and he shows flashes of hanging on to the puck better in the corner, controlling the puck, not just giving it away right away or coughing it up. He still makes the odd mistake here and there. Last night he had one giveaway there that was just like glaring, but he's still a young kid and he's adjusting. I think his progression is at a really good pace, and people just have to be patient with him. Like this whole thing, the whole rebuild, they got to be patient. And I'm not really worried about this player. I think he's going to surprise a lot of people down the road. He's really going to come through, and then you're going to hear everybody say, "Oh, I knew it. Even it's just a question of time." But it is a question of time.
As you said, Knuckles, I mean, some Habs fans might think back to Kotkaniemi or Galchenyuk and how they didn't work out, along with a lot of other first-round picks. But the Canadiens management team, Slafkovsky's a lot better surrounded than those guys were. I mean, Nicholas, watch practice. Adam Nicholas is on the ice with them all the time, working with them before practice, working with them after practice. They do video work together. He's well surrounded. He's got a real good support system working with them both on and off the ice. So he, and the thing we're talking about him shooting more, that's also going to help Cole Caulfield because, especially on the power play, because one of the reasons that Slafkovsky has been so open and people, posting videos of Mike Matheson with Slafkovsky open and not giving the puck, the reason he's so open is the other team knows he's not going to shoot. So they're more focusing on checking Cole. So now if they know Slafkovsky's going to shoot too, now it's going to make it, more options. It's going to make it easier for Cole Caulfield to get open. And so they're both going to feed off of that. I think we're going to see Cole Caulfield, he's already on a pretty good roll now, but the fact that Slafkovsky's going to start shooting more is going to help Cole Caulfield get open also.
And you got to give the management group full credit for allowing the growing pains to continue without pulling him out of the lineup, sending him to the minors, playing him 5 minutes a game, et cetera, all those things that they used to do with, first year, second year guys when they weren't producing and weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So they showed incredible patience in allowing this kid to grow through error and, learn from it. And there's a type of quality character type kid that, the mistakes were made, but he learned from them, and he's going the good way, and really happy.
And
I love that kid. I love him.
Yeah, he's a likable kid. Knuckles, when you're around him, he's just a real likable kid. He has fun, but he's hard on himself too. Like he's a sponge, but he's a fun kid to be around. He's got a great personality, and you realize he's not even in his first language, right? It's a new country, a new language, everything. But he's enjoying being in the NHL. He's just a lot of fun to be around, and a kid you want to see him do well.
Yeah, talking about being hard on himself after Tuesday's game against the Capitals, he said that he didn't think his line played that well.
Yeah, well, the other thing we were talking about, Marty St. Louis, putting him on the first line, when he took him off the first line there recently, that was a good move too, because he had been there for like 25 games or so, and he wasn't looking good the last couple of games he was there. So it was a kid, we're not just going to give it to you, kid. We're not just going to, if you start slacking off, we don't think you're doing what we want you to do, we're going to take you off that first line again. They put him back on, and look what happened against Washington. So it's that fine line of giving them a pat on the back when he needs it, but you also need to give a guy a kick in the butt every once in a while. And I think Marty St. Louis, from his experience, his playing days, as he said, I've been a fourth liner, a third liner, a second liner, a first liner. I've been sent down. He knows how all these guys feel and how they react. So I think taking him off the first line for a little bit there was a good move, and then putting him back on there now is also a good move.
And it shows his maturity that he didn't sulk after that he responded the way that's saying, I want to prove to you that I am a first liner and I deserve that spot back.
Yeah, as Knuckles said, actually, I think he was 14 when he started living by himself. It was crazy. And imagine that. I mean, I have a son, 14 years old, living by yourself. And I remember Kent Hughes, when they asked him about it before the draft, well, who cooked? He said, I did. So he's a mature, he's 19, he's a mature 19-year-old kid. And he's still a kid. Some people might forget he's still a kid, but he's a good kid, and there's reason to believe that he will continue to progress.
Another move the Canadiens made, a minor one. They called up Brandon Gignac. It's been a few years since he's played in the NHL. Were you surprised by that move with the Canadiens, Chris? What was your reaction?
Listen, getting rid of Monahan, right? Moving on, they got to take a look at some other guys. Maybe come up. A guy had been around for a while, has a little experience, and he had good numbers. Certainly down there. I mean, he had 42, he had a point a game. I mean, and his numbers weren't bad. He was an even player down there too. He wasn't in the minus column. So maybe, again, I don't know a whole lot about him. I just know they probably feel they can rely on him a little more, and why not take a peek at him? They had Joshua Roy up here, Roy. But, I think that's what they're going to do. And it's nice now here that you're able to go to Laval and maybe pluck a guy out of there and give him a shot and take a look at him. They're in a situation. Is it going to kill them if they do it? No, it's not like they're in a playoff race. So why not take a look at some of these guys they have down there? And I said this before, but I remember a time when we were here, you didn't know who the hell was in Laval, and you didn't have anybody you could call up. Like, you look at the score sheet down there. I mean, I think everybody had no points. Nobody had any goals. Nobody had any assists. It was like crazy. You couldn't bring anybody up. So, that's improved for sure. The minor league system here has improved. And I think Jean-Francois is doing a good job down there with these guys. And, they come up here and, you plug them in and see what they can do. So I'm glad to see this kid get another shot. He was down in the East Coast Hockey League. He got bounced around a little bit, this kid, and he worked his way up and piss and moan and back at the AHL level, and he's doing well.
Yeah, it's nice to see a Quebec-born kid be given an opportunity. Here's you talk about timing. You talk about there was a void there, obviously, in that position. They felt that this young man could step in there and fill in, and he's given the opportunity. Obviously, very excited, and wants to do whatever he can do to stay and help the team out. So I don't know a lot about him other than the timing of it was one of he was in the organization. They needed a guy like this, so let's give him a chance. And he seems to be pretty excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's understood they needed centers after trading Monahan, and Newhook's still not ready. So, you mentioned Knuckles had 42 points in 43 games in Laval, was leading the team in scoring. Call him up, give him a few games here, see if he might have potential to stay in the NHL at some point. But I think it also sends a pretty strong message to Laval that if you work hard and you play hard down there, you get a chance to get called up. We've seen them do it with other players. I believe March 5th is the deadline for guys to be returned to Laval if they're going to be eligible to play in the AHL playoffs. So I think he will go back before then, because I think they want to get the Laval team into the playoffs as far as just developing these guys, getting them more playoff experience with the young guys. So I think he'll end up going back to Laval. But I think it sends a good message to all the guys down there that if you work hard and you play hard, when we need somebody, we'll call you up. And, it's been 6 years, I think, since he played his only game in the NHL. Can only imagine how thrilled he was. I'm sure there was a point where he figured it would never happen again. So give him that little taste of the NHL. The Canadiens get to look to see what he is. And then when you send him back, guys, I think they will send him back to Laval eventually. He'll have that taste and be fired up to go down there and help this Laval team hopefully get into the playoffs and give these young guys down there like Mayu and Waugh and these guys a chance to experience the playoff run in the AHL.
Now, someone that was mentioned a little bit before by Chris was Joshua Roy. Do you think that he's going to be called up again this season by the Canadiens, or do you think they're taking that approach that they had him come up, see what he could do in the NHL, but they don't want to rush him? What do you think, Rick, for the future for Joshua Roy?
Well, there's a timetable here as far as player movement goes, but I like the kid, and I think the future is about these young, talented kids that know how to play the game, and I like and have been impressed with the way this kid has handled himself. I would like to see him come back and play some games. He's on my list before I mention any other name that he would probably replace, but he's got the tools to do things offensively, and I'd love to see him come back and see what he can do. And if it came down to crunch time, that obviously he'd have to go back to Laval at a certain point, or maybe he just lights it up. And but he's got to get an opportunity to play and play as much as he can, because the future is all about these up and coming young guys. And great to see that they've got some guys in the organization that can play.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to leave him in Laval because I think they think that's best for his development to play a ton of minutes down there and play in all different situations. And again, as I mentioned earlier, hopefully Laval gets into the playoffs and he'll experience that also. They got enough of a look at him, I think, to see if he's ready or not to play in the NHL. I think he is. I'd be surprised if he's not with the Canadiens to start next season. But at this point in his development, I think it makes more sense to just leave him down there in Laval the rest of his season. Play the heck out of him, play on the power play, first line, everything else. He can kill penalties too, have him kill penalties and go through a playoff run and then come to training camp next season. As I said, I'd be surprised if he's not on the Canadiens lineup at the start of next season.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Stu. You know, I think they're going to maybe just look at some different players here through the end of the season, take a peek at some different guys, see how they fare at this level. And then I like that idea too, keeping them down there to the end of the season. I don't know if they get are they pretty close to a playoff spot? Are they out of it?
They're right around. They run on that roll there. They're right in the playoff.
They're right there. So I think they want to make a run at the playoffs there. They're going to need him. And then if they get in the playoffs, it's going to be an experience for him that I think will help him coming up to the next level next year. I think we'll see him in training camp next year, and he'll probably start the year with the big club. But I can see him staying down there the rest of the year.
Yeah, and you mentioned J.F. Houle, too. I mean, he should be applauded for what he's done down there. Because I know at development camp, he spoke with us and he said that it's going to be tough when we start the season because there's going to be a lot of first-year pro guys, including Joshua Roy, and it's going to be really tough. And it's a big jump, whether it's going from junior or university, whatever, to play pro hockey at the AHL. And he said, we're going to have a rough start at the beginning, and they did. But now they've come along and they've been on a roll. So if this team can get into the playoffs, that says a lot about the job that J.F. Houle has done coaching those guys down there.
Yeah, a big difference from when the Habs AHL team didn't make the playoffs for many, many years, and it was just kind of yeah. But yeah, it's great the development of the players, and it's also the proximity, having them so close, and this make it much easier to call a player up. You don't have to worry about travel or anything like that. So for our final question of the episode, what's been the biggest disappointment for you so far with the Canadiens' performance this year? Stu, what do you think?
I think it's the injury to Doc and Newhook also, because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think it really threw a wrench into the development plans moving forward as far as line combinations and what. Kirby Doc's lost basically a full season of his development. We don't know how he's going to be when he comes back. He might not even be ready to start training camp next year. That's a major knee injury that he had. It's like a full year recovery usually. So I think just that. I mean, there's not really a lot of other things to be disappointed about. I mean, some people might be disappointed with the 3 goalie system, but I understand why Kent Hughes has kept it. He doesn't want to give Jake Allen away for nothing. But this season was all about development. At the golf tournament, Jeff Gorton didn't even want to use the word playoffs. This was all about developing and growing this young team. But those injuries to Doc and Newhook really threw a wrench into it held back the development of this, not only them as individuals, but also this team this season.
For me, it was the inconsistency in their play. I mean, you look at some of the games that they beat some of the better teams, whether it's Boston or Colorado, whatever, it was like, wow. And, basically knocking on the door from a point perspective of, possibly sneaking into the playoffs and figuring that they've come to understand how they need to play each night. And then next thing you know, they go from, top playing capability to absolutely can't find them. And this went on for quite a bit of the year. And that's the part of you can say what you want. Yeah, it's a young group, but that's the part it's hard to, understand why they had problems in those areas, because they did have some success. And how could they forget how to play the game from one game to the next and, not be able to perform and get more of a positive result. So that inconsistency was happening too often, and I hope they try and find a way to correct that.
I have to say I agree with both of you guys. The injuries, certainly that threw a wrench. Greeny, I get it. For me, this team gives up way too many shots, and they're not good in their own end of the rink. And I think, yeah, they're young, but I really think I'd see an improvement now in their own end of the rink. And boy, I know there's young defensemen here. I know there's issues with the center iceman. Just trade Monahan, but boy, in their own end of the rink, they're still making mistakes. They're leaving guys wide open. There's such holes in that defense. And when you're talking about goaltenders trying to make their mark, you got 3 of them. And some nights it's really tough on those guys. And, you know, Carey Price used to be here to close the door, at least keep them close. It's not, and I think they've done a good job that way. Montembeault has, I know for sure, but there's some nights you get in there, guys are taking shots from areas where it's just almost impossible to stop the puck. You're just hoping it hits you. And you got these kids that can pick corners. So that's one area for me that I think really has to improve moving forward with this team, is in their own end of the rink. And they certainly struggle there. There's no question about it.
Well, that's it for us this week. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you go to the Hockey Inside Out website to check out all your daily Habs coverage. Also, sign up for the newsletters. You just have to go to montrealgazette.com/newsletters to get the Hockey Inside Out one. And of course, make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will see you here next week.